titled this video When the Left Fucks Up. And I have to point out, without trying to disassociate myself from anybody on the left, because I'm agreeing with you a lot right now. But I do have to point out when you make a mistake. And in my experience, I'll explain this kind of in details. I'm just not ranting like many of the right-wing pundits are doing, because everybody's jumping on the story of the protesters invading the city's church in Minnesota. Let me back up a step and let me put my place in my experience here before I talk about what happened at the church. As I've told you guys before, I am a 100% atheist. I'm about as hardcore as an atheist as you can get. Being raised Catholic in a dysfunctional family and actually reading the Bible will do that to you if you actually take the time to think through the space. But yeah, I am not just non-religious. I am literally a non-believer. There are no gods. There are no angels. There are no demons. There are no ghosts. The Holy Ghost isn't a thing. Okay, this is just literature people have taken way too seriously. And it's not like there can't be good things in literature to make a moral message on. You can do that with lots of different literature. Okay, but our over fascination with a particular book has always sat pretty weird with me. Okay. Now, when it comes to the First Amendment, I think, slightly misses an object. It's great that we have freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. I'm certainly not the first one to talk about this. I think it was Ardent that talked about this in the 50s and 60s, is freedom of thought should have been included. Okay, so I'm so anti-monarchy, anti-feudalism, anti-communism. I don't like the collective brutality of authoritarian systems. This is just a fact of life that I understood well before Trump. Okay. But I am also an individualist and a groovy libertarian. Okay, center-left libertarian. I think people should be making their own decisions in life. Okay, if you want to be religious, that's your choice. Okay, it isn't just freedom of assembly, but we're going to talk a lot about freedom of assembly today. It's about freedom of thought and a philosophy matrix, which organized religion can be for some people, that falls into the silo of freedom of thought. Okay, even though I am, and I was like this, like even my very religious teammates that I worked with undercover, like one was a devout Jew, spoke Hebrew, had been to Israel 4 times, prayed at the Wailing Wall. I mean, he's a devout Jew. And the other one was a Florida Christian guy brought up in, the Florida Christianity space. And they knew back then, all those decades ago, that I pretty much walked to my own beat. Okay, I do not fall into a category unless I can, gather the data, do the reading, listen, unpack, learn, and basically decide for myself. I was never one just to join the club for the sake of joining the club. Even with all that said, I have had multiple times to have to take a call to a place of worship, an assembly hall, a meeting house. It doesn't matter what they call it, as long as the function is a gathering under some sort of religious auspices. Okay. I have had to respond multiple times. This happened once as an Army MP, believe it or not. Someone went in and the Padre called. He wouldn't listen to orders, so he got arrested and we threw him in the police station until his captain, his first sergeant, came to pick him up because he was going through alcohol and mental problems and decided to take it out on the Padre. Poor major didn't know what to think about it because he was like, I'm still a major. You can't yell at me like that. Like, well, we got this, Padre. He's going. Um, if my memory serves me, I had 3 separate calls at churches. One resulted in an arrest, and that's what I want to talk about today. Um, the left is patting themselves on the back pretty hard. They may need rotor cuff surgery. They're whacking themselves so hard on the back. Because they ran into an active church service and they disrupted an assembly. They disrupted a meeting house. Now, forget the law for a second, and I will be getting into the details of the law using my state where I was a licensed peace officer as an example. But to interrupt a meeting house or an assembly or a religious service, by the way, which includes a funeral. Okay. I did write a guy a misdemeanor ticket and threatened to arrest him right there and tow his car because he cut off a funeral procession. Okay. I didn't give him the infraction ticket. I gave him the misdemeanor ticket and told him if he didn't cooperate, I'd arrest him, throw him in cuffs, and he could sign his ticket in jail after he was booked. Okay. So do not interrupt a religious service, congregation, gathering, whatever. They are individuals. They have a right to an assembly in an assembly or meeting house. Um, so, sorry, having a kind of a rough day today. I'm trying to gather my thoughts. If you give me a second here. Um, even as an atheist, even as an individual, even though a guy who thinks organized religion is a bunch of crock, it's a power structure. A power structure, especially with Christianity, that just really in its mainstay develops a lot of hatred for other people. Okay. I cannot imagine how frickin' rude it would be to interrupt an assembly or meeting house. I would never do it for any reason. Okay. And I am one of the most hardcore atheists you will ever meet. I'm going to go into a Catholic church and interrupt the Padre. I'm going to go to a Baptist church and tell the choir to shut the fuck up. No. Even if I have a serious disagreement with them, I'm not doing it in the meeting house, the church, the synagogue, the mosque. To do that to a Quaker or a Mennonite where I grew up in New England, the whole community would turn against you. You can have a disagreement with the Quakers. You don't interrupt their meeting house. That's what you don't fucking do. But, and I know, I looked up the guy's name. The guy at the city church, his name is, he's I guess an assistant pastor or something like that. Deacon. I don't know how you break it down, and I don't know what sect that church is. I didn't spend that much time looking it up, but it's David Easterwood who they are mad about because I guess he is an ICE supervisor in the region, in the Minneapolis, Minnesota region, and he's also a religious leader in this church, the city's church. So they stormed in a large group, which indicates Southern Baptist. Thank you, thank you. So they went into a Southern Baptist church, and they committed absolutely minimally a criminal misdemeanor that's punishable by 1 year in county jail and a $1,000 fine of the state under Section 302 of the Penal Code. Okay. I know this because the guy that wouldn't stop yelling at the Padre at the St. Mark Church And I was like standing there, I'm going, dude, this is a special type of trespass. I don't even need the Padre's signature on this one. I don't need the owner or manager of the building or property to sign a ticket as a private person's arrest. This is a special one. This is a special trespass. Either you leave and you stop swearing at the Padre and his congregation, or I'm throwing your ass in the pokey and I'm calling deputy sheriffs to transport you to county. And you can bail yourself out of county, 25 miles away. Knock it off and leave. He turned to me and told me, fuck you. He wasn't going to leave. I go, I only have to warn you once. I mean, there's literally 40 witnesses plus a Padre. The judge is going to love hearing his testimony. Turn around, put your hands behind your back. No. Your choice, dude. Okay. Wrist lock, didn't even have to take him to the ground. Wrist lock, he just, got his hand behind it, one arm behind his back, got the second handcuff, boom, in the handcuffs, screaming and yelling all the way out the door. Okay. I arrested him for disturbance of a meeting house or an assembly. And remember, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any of this. But I also believe in your right, your individual American right, to attend services of your choice, to attend the congregation and meeting of your choice. Now, the problem is you entered in a group which easily gives both county, state, or federal prosecutors, if they want to go out there. Now, I much less doubt the locals are going to go after you on this, but the feds are already talking about that, and I'll get to that. The right-wingers and the DOJ have lost their ever-loving fucking mind over this. Okay? To Todd Blanche, the protesters at the city's church re-tacked Jesus up to another set of 2x4s. That's how pissed they are about this. And I hate to tell you, yeah, I can understand why they're so pissed about this. You crossed the line. It's not like they didn't cross the line first. I understand that. But you crossed a line that I thought American society, we had decided we weren't going to do this. Okay? Because you did it as a criminal conspiracy. Mistake number 2. Not only is it 302, it's a criminal conspiracy to commit a crime. Now they got a twofer on you. Did anybody do something really stupid and utter anything that could be considered, even by the far right wingers like Todd Blanche and the rest of the clowns show up there? Could they even improperly or not properly? That's not my point. Could they perceive what came out of your mouth as hate speech while you were interrupting that congregation or that meeting house or that assembly? That's a hate crime. Out of the box hate crime. Did you really mean to go there? Like when some of the craziness happened in our neck of the woods a few years ago, we had a lot of Proud Babies starting to show up at different places to interrupt, like the kids' book reading club at the community center in the village next town down. They didn't like who was reading to the kids, so they showed up, and one of them had a gun. Okay, that pissed off our sheriff, who was quite the right winger, but oh my God, the sheriff went ballistic, booked these guys on every charge under the sun because they showed up with a gun with kids there. Okay, so we already had a problem going on. So I actually thought of going down to our local temple and telling the rabbi, giving him my business card. And I said, if you have problems and the city won't help you or the sheriffs won't help you, I can have 10 people here that will help you. No problem, no questions asked. Why? Because the temple has the right to have a meeting house, an assembly, or a congregation. Hell, this is not even America. This is common law we took from Europe. That's one thing you don't do. You don't interrupt a christening. You don't interrupt communion. You don't interrupt a wake or a funeral. Like I said, the guy cut off a funeral procession. Whoop, pull over, dude. You are now getting a big ticket. Oh, by the way, this is a misdemeanor ticket. This is a $2,000 ticket for cutting off the hearse. Now, they jumped on this. The far right jumped on this. Benny Johnson had Harmit Dillon, who's one of the princesses of Nazism in America. She goes on a tirade about how everybody who entered that house was godless and they have no idea what happens in these houses, and they're going to be fully prosecuting every one of them at the federal government level. Okay. This is talking point number one. You just handed them ammo. Not only did you hand them ammo to be federally prosecuted, because they can very easily get a grand jury to indict everybody I saw on video today inside that church who was protesting with a civil rights violation, a criminal civil rights violation under the U.S. Code. Every single one of them. And free speech is not going to cover you on this one. This is one of the exceptions. This is like yelling fire in the theater. This is one of the exceptions. Don't fuck with an assembly. There's smarter ways to deal with this. This is kind of the reason I'm so upset. Because one, even the way I feel about organized religion, I have a less of a problem with faith than I do organized religion. I think faith sometimes is a little too much wishful thinking. I mean, we all hope and think forward, hoping that people will be better, people will do better, we'll all live by a moral and an ethical construct that we all get along with. Yeah, sure. But I think the magical sky daddy sometimes goes, way too freaking far. I think what you just gave license to, because the going into the churches was exactly what everybody complained about, including me, when ICE did it. Or when city police, I forget, was it New York? Yeah, yeah, New York was one of them, but there was a bunch of city ones where somebody that was wanted by the police ran into a church and they yelled sanctuary. Remember the whole standoff between Reverend Al and Reverend Al Sharpton and the NYPD, and finds out the girl was actually the criminal, and they declared sanctuary wrongfully. Um, you got to be careful when it's a house of worship, just because the whole factorization, and yes, the left is about as religious as the right is, because when you look at the people moving away from religion, the movement away from religion has nothing to do with political philosophy. A lot of people are believing a lot of religions for a few different reasons. Religiosity in America is actually falling pretty dramatically, but it's actually from across the political spectrum it's occurring at. I think that's a good sign, because countries like Ireland just gave up on religion because they finally figured out the Catholic Church is completely full of shit and was an actual danger to the Irish citizens. And they were actually, when they finally released the Tomes reports about the young mothers and babies' homes, which were human rights atrocities, I mean, international crime. Somebody should have gone to The Hague over that shit. Okay, Ireland, Irish in Ireland drop religion in mass. Okay, maybe that's going to happen out of this. I don't know, but that doesn't negate from the fact the history and the protections we have always given temples, churches, synagogues, congregations. Does this mean that I know I started it. I know I started it. Okay, but you just gave them ammo to do it again, 10 times worse. because you know what Benny Johnson and whatever this Nazi princess was, what's her name? Dylan? Well, didn't you see what they did? Mhm. Jesus loves Republicans, not you. We're the righteous one with the righteous indictment, not you. In the end, you're gonna have a whole bunch of prisoners sitting in federal prison. They're gonna sue the protesters under the federal protections for religion, and they have a good chance at winning a large settlement against them. Now, when ICE, because an NAA leader is speaking at the church next Sunday morning or the morning after that, whatever, and ICE decides to raid that church, what defense do you have for that? For disrupting the service? You certainly didn't lead by example, because there could have been a whole different tact you could have used, and I think it had a bigger punch. Instead of crossing that line that has literally been established since we were colonies, okay, local sheriffs, before we even had states in the colonies, would arrest you for interrupting a congregation. Most certainly. If the congregants themselves didn't pull out a Winchester rifle and shoot you themselves. Okay. It's always been bad in America to interrupt the congregation. Now you're going to have a complaint when the native tribes, because they're already arresting Sioux and Navajo and other tribes people. You don't get any more American than the people who already lived here before white people showed up. Okay. They're American Americans. Been here for 15,000 plus years. Some of the tribes. What do you do when they just ride in on with armored vehicles and SUVs into a Native American ceremony being held outdoors? It's like, well, we don't care. This is a religious ceremony. We get to interrupt it, just like you did at City's Church. They will use this for justification within days of doing something far worse than just the verbal interruption. Because remember, ICE doesn't work with verbal commands; they work with kicking the shit out of people on any excuse. Do you want to see what's happening in the streets of Minneapolis happen inside a black church, inside a Jewish temple, at a Native American religious ceremony outdoors? I certainly don't. Because this is the tact you could have taken. You could have set up a whole bunch of people with live feeds onto their social media, and as each one of the congregants come up off the church steps and step on the public sidewalk, you go, "Hey, you know your guy Eastwood is one of the nice Nazi, the ICE Nazis. Why do you attend a church with a Nazi leader? Why do you have a guy that's literally being promoted by a leader in his federal organization that's literally walking around with an SS haircut, wearing an SS officer's jacket? What do you consider good Christianity versus bad Christianity?" And ask every single person walking out of that church the same set of questions. Are you refusing to answer any of our questions because you know the guy is a Nazi? Are you a Nazi, sir? Are you a Nazi, ma'am? Are you a card-carrying member of the American Nazi Party, or you just still holding on to your GOP card right now? Why not ask every other church leader in that town? This is America. There's a church and or something on every other street corner. Go to all the other churches, get their chief pastor, amen, rabbi, voodoo lord, whoever it is, okay? Do you agree with the Nazi over at City's Church? Do you believe that his brand of Christianity is a good brand of Christianity? What does this say for organized religion? I bet some of the interviews would have been worth the watch. And they're really, really putting the icing thick on the cake here. Byron Donald, isn't that the dude from North Carolina who likes the training porn? He's got many opinions on this. He said they were all paid protesters that were sent there to interfere with religious rights. They don't need to be paid to be in a criminal conspiracy to commit a crime to disrupt a religious service and violate religious rights. They don't have to be paid, but they're throwing that icing on the cake. Oh, of course, Mayor Fry knew about this and was the money courier. I'm joking about this, but he was speaking as if like Fry was the courier of the money between George Soros and the paid protesters inside the church. You can make several mistakes in dealing with Trumpianism, modern authoritarianism, the flat out corruption that we're dealing with under dear leader porn star Humper. You could do things like, I don't know, vote in Chuck Schumer again. We could be dumb enough to elect Nancy Pelosi again because she's not our savior. Or you could cross a line where the courts and the prosecutors, well, the courts aren't going to tolerate it. And the prosecutors very easily have you dead to rights. Because it didn't take much to convict that guy in court for the 302 arrest when he kept yelling obscenities and profanity at the Padre. And then telling me to my face aloud in front of 40 congregants to go fuck myself. Okay. Once the judge heard from the Padre, I'm like, you got a defense for this shit? Because good luck. Because you don't have a First Amendment defense. That's not a thing in this situation. I was just exercising my right to free speech and my own right to assembly. That can't come at the cost of other people's rights. That's the mistake. It's the same protesting mistake I've made elsewhere. You have the absolute right to say whatever you want on the public sidewalk or the city park. When you go and running into someone's private property or going into an interior office and deciding to occupy, that's why these kids in Stanford are screwed. Okay? As moral and just as your point may have been, you have very little defense to the criminal charges. And the laws that were written in many states about right-wing agitators and their disruptions to city halls and universities and stuff like that. Everybody wanted these stranger disruption special trespassing laws. Well, they're just going to be turned around and used on the left-wing folks now. And the sad thing about this, nobody in ICE is ever being charged. Even if dear leader drops dead of a stroke tonight, and he can't give his blanket pardon, which he loves to offer every one of his criminals working for him, JD Vance will do it. If JD Vance doesn't do it and he just bows out because he's a total cosplaying idiot who doesn't know what he's doing, he's in way over his head. Okay. Grinder Mike Johnson, he'll abdicate and probably end up with Thune as president. Okay. Thune will also pardon all the ICE agents. So the ICE agents are pretty much going to walk free through a blanket pardon. That was pre-planned before they told them to go out and start committing crimes, literally terrorizing the populace. Because like Jesse Ventura said the other day, and I thought it was a great example because he was in the Philippines when Marcos went crazy. I can't tell the difference between Marcos' regime and Trump's regime. And he's right. He's right. Everybody loves when was it Truman sent in the troops to tell Governor Racist there, Governor George, um, that the little black girls had to go to school, and you couldn't prevent them from going to a public school. They're public. They're a member of the public. They're American citizens. They get to go. They get to go to school. Yeah, we all like that, right? I learned about that when I was a little kid in social studies. I'm like, yeah, they're kids. Why can't a kid go to school? I mean, we only had one black family in the town I grew up in New England, but it wasn't like we blocked Curtis from coming to school. Curtis was sitting in the same row I was. One of my best friends is Puerto Rican. He's sitting in the class too. All kids get to go to school. That's what we do. Okay. Well, none of us are going to like when Hegseth and Trump send troops into Minneapolis to protect the churches. Now, it's not an equal equivalence. I know. But they'll try to pretend so in their far right minds. They certainly will try to pretend it is. And that's the problem. Please do not repeat that. And an atheist is about to say this. For the love of God, do not do that again. Find a different tactic. I'd rather you go find his wife at the grocery store and ask his wife if she can tell which Proud Boy is his favorite employee by smelling his dick. I'd much rather you get rude and vulgar than go out and interrupt an assembly. Because that's a line you do not cross in my life. You do not do that. That's wrong. If they can do it to a right-wing pastor in a right-wing church, then they can come right down the hill and go into the temple and interrupt the temple. It will be tit for tat. Now, here's where it gets real problematic. Any of those protesters have any priors? Any prior convictions? A lot of states have law. I'm not an expert on Minnesota law, of course. I've never lived there or worked there. But a lot of states, even my quote unquote liberal California, okay. Oh, we have enhancement laws out the fucking yin yang. You got a prior conviction, they can make that misdemeanor a felony. Your 302 is now a felony charge. 2 years in prison. Okay. Did anybody knock something over? Vandalism's almost a give me when you're already committing another misdemeanor. Oh, sorry, knocked over that candle. Well, you were just in the midst of a crime anyways. But any sort of criminal threats in the midst of disturbing the assembly almost certainly would be filed as a felony. So I'm hoping it was all chanting and just calling the Eastwood guy an asshole because he does sound like he's an asshole. Okay. Because if anybody who thinks they're a good person and they're still working for this organization is a goddamn liar. There's no way I'm working for a clown show like this. Shit. I'll learn how to drive a fucking tractor trailer truck or become a UPS driver before I do that shit. My job is to stop actual criminals. Bank robbers, liquor store robbers, catch a rapist in the park. My job isn't to go violate a bunch of people's civil rights because they're walking down the sidewalk. Mere presence is now a felony even though Section 111 is not a felony without violence or a weapon present, merely standing there. Supreme Court of the United States said filming the police is a First Amendment right. They're standing there, they're filming. They're a felonious threat. They can they can have the shit kicked out of them. They can be arrested and immediately deported out of state. Yes, that's happening. People in Minneapolis are going to Louisiana and Texas, which I don't know how you do that. Locality is the law of the land. You don't arrest somebody in my city and transport them 7 counties over without moving the trial hearing. You just can't go, oh yeah, I'm going to book them in this county, and then all of a sudden they're 7 counties away. Well, not unless the county had like a health problem or like the sewage backed up and they physically couldn't keep people in those cells. We may put them in the next county over, but they're literally transforming into multiple states over, practically on the other side of the country. You know, the Canadian border people are being shipped all the way to the Mexican border. Portland people are being shipped to Louisiana. How does that follow locality? It's supposed to be a given. Okay. The fucking letter to Norway. Has anybody not seen it? It's so off the for sizzle. This is almost like this is almost asking somebody, please put me on a 5150 hold. This is a message sent by the sitting president of the United States of America to the Prime Minister of Norway, an ally. Other video I was talking about, like a lot of people don't know how deep our friendship and our ally situation is with a lot of these countries. A lot of these countries do stuff for us, do top secret stuff for us. You want to hate on Canada and Canadians? You don't understand the security agreement between Canada and the United States. You're clueless. What does the Canadians want for us? I'll ask that again. The North Pole. They have a better line of sight on it with the technology we gave them. Oh, the technology we only gave a couple of other countries. Only a few countries like Sweden, Australia, Canada, a couple others have the over-horizon technology. Okay. We gave it to Canada because Canada fills a role for us, which they do extraordinarily well. So this is an allied prime minister he's speaking to in this message. And I'm going to read the whole thing verbatim. Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace. Although it always will be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect the lands from Russia or China, so why do they have a right to ownership anyways? There are no written documents. It was a boat that landed 300 years ago, and we've had boats landing there also. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should be something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have a complete and total control of Greenview. Thank you, President DJT. Close quote. In the insanity register, if you were calculating it from 0, completely sane, to 10, absolutely one flew over the cuckoo's nest, that's about a 14. What he is doing is not just trying to grab the territory of Greenland, which is a part of Denmark. This would be like China trying to take Guam from us. Guam is the United States of America. The Marianas Islands are the United States of America. Puerto Rico is the United States of America. Okay. If China were to take Guam, we would call China insane and start shooting at them. So what the fuck is this? Now, did he stop 8 wars plus? No, that's a facile, sociopathic, narcissist thing he keeps repeating through his dementia stages. Oh, by the way, I do not think, and I'm very serious about this, I do not think Donald Trump is running the country. I think Ross Foyt and more so Stephen Miller are running the country right now. They just stick, it's weekends at Bernie's, but with the president. Trump is not making the decisions. Trump is not deciding what the horror show is that's replacing sane policy. Stephen Miller is. And he's getting more and more insertive in his Twitter account. The hostility is actually going up over time, over a short window. So he's positioning himself to, because I think they're all waiting for dear leader to drop dead. He's in that ill health. Okay. Stephen Miller wants to make sure the choke chain works on JD Vance next. And if he doesn't, they're going to bounce him like a bad heartbeat. And then we'll go to the secession till we get a one that will heal properly. So there's no reason to give Trump a Nobel Peace Prize because he has been effectuating war is the main part of his policy. There has been no peace he has considered. He has not thought purely of peace. He's never done that for a minute. Okay. He loves the war in Gaza. He loves bombing Iran. He loves bombing Syria. Jen says Trump is a charismatic stooge to open the door to the real actors. You are absolutely correct. A plus points. You get a cookie. That is true. Okay. Yeah, he is the figurehead, the ailing, aged figurehead who is easily manipulatable. All you have to be, they knew this in the first term. All you have to be is the last person to talk to him. Then he conforms to anything you just told him. That's why Sean Hannity always tries to talk to him 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Because just like Slobodan Milosevic had state-run TV with his girlfriend being the anchor on state TV, well, Trump's boyfriend, Sean Hannity, is the state-run media in America. Okay? That's why Sean Hannity wants to talk to him, because he wants to make sure that Trump now repeats what Hannity is about to say in a show or what he just said on a show. It's alignment. They're aligning the bullshit. Denmark cannot protect the land from Russia or China. No, Denmark can't. We know that. We've known that since the end of World War II. We've known that since the Treaty of San Francisco that ended World War II in 1951. Denmark does exactly what Denmark has been told to do. Same thing with Belgium. Same thing with the Netherlands. Same thing with Germany. Notice how their force structures and their intelligence and their radio and radar and cryptocom is all different in those countries. They're at different levels because each one of them got assigned a role. Now, the French, they're a little more spiky. They kind of do more of their shit on their own. So do the Brits. But the rest of the countries, including Italy, there's a reason that why their force structures are the way they are. Because we need them to focus on certain things while we do the heavy lifting and we get heavy forces placed in countries that are forward. Remember, the Iron Curtain came right along Germany and split the old Germany into West Germany and East Germany. So where did we want all the tanks? In Germany proper. So did we armor up the Germans? Oh, fuck yeah, we did. And then we forward parked some British tanks, a whole shit ton of American tanks, and made sure that the response brigades from France had some heavy armor too. And then we gave the British, German, and the French, we gave them all the charm armor. The stuff that pissed off the Soviets and still pissing off Putin. It's real hard to take out a modern NATO tank from the front with the charm armor on it. Really hard. Okay. So Denmark can't protect the land from Russia or China. No shit. That's why we created NATO, you dumb motherfucker. Nobody, including the United States, can stand up to Russia on a full-blown folded gap scenario or any other one of the dozen scenarios we know about that would be a Eastern incursion. We have to do it as a group. We've known that since the 1950s. There's no new math here. It's just a bunch of white Christian nationalists and a fake poser Christian who's really just an autocrat, narcissist, psychopath, or sociopath, probably both psycho and sociopath, making shit up because they literally do not understand the calculus of world order, post World War II history, post Vietnam history, post double failure in Afghanistan, one for the Soviets, one for us. None of this calculus is known by any of the idiots in Trump's immediate orbit. Do you think anybody around him is an expert in anything in these political world dynamics? You would be totally wrong. They do not have a fucking clue. That's just not my opinion. Go listen to the PhDs in political science. Go listen to the retired 3-star generals and 4-star generals who are now speaking out quite loudly. Doesn't have a fucking clue how NATO works. Doesn't have a fucking clue why Belgium is Belgium in NATO. Okay? We expect Belgium to build like a Fort Hood or Fort Irwin size base and put 3,000 tanks on it? But with their economy and their size of a country? No, that's not even possible. So here's another job to do. Here's another role. Very important, but you don't have the game to do the big things. So we're going to do a plane so you can defend your own airspace and help other countries defend their airspace. We're going to give you a lot of great comm gear and a lot of good training for light infantry because that's what we need you for. Denmark is doing how much wrong according to everything forward of the Treaty of San Francisco? Nah, not much. They're pretty much been doing what we've been asking them to do. Same way with Sweden. You know, the hunt for Red October, that wasn't a submarine. It was actually a surface ship. Who listened into the whole thing? Sweden. Then they got on the phone and went, dudes, you really want to listen to this? Yeah, Red October, the movie is quite dramatized, but yeah, it actually happened. It's based on a real event. Okay. And it was the Swedes with the Fort Huachuca gear because they could break through all their simple frequency hopping with no encryption shit of the day. A lot of the boats didn't have the stuff we had or our allies had, and that was on purpose. Soviets were too broke to get that technology online, and it was easy for us to give it to Sweden because Sweden's been spying and listening for us since beginning of the Great Wars. Jen says, seems nobody under 50 knows this anymore. I expect that when they stop teaching it in schools. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or and the bigger problem is we have devalued reading long form books. And it's not just because of social media and attention spans, but that is a big piece of it. There's a bunch of reasons why that a lot of people wouldn't spend the time to do other than watch like a YouTube short when it came to post World War II history. You know, oh, if you want to do some really cool post World War II history, Sarah Payne, War College professor. I love that old gal. She is like one of the smartest war historians and military historians out there. She's got a bunch of video, hours and hours and beyond of videos there, and she breaks down. She knows every detail about, especially like the the mechanisms on how we got into World War II, how we had to build up to it, the Soviet response, the Allied response, and she knows all the details, and she's a massively good source. Then the narcissism in this message really hits a crescendo. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding. Just absolutely false. That's just narcissism gone out of control. Okay. And I'm sick and tired of the false hero worship in our society because one person does thing and they're just a part of the cog, just one cog in the system. But then somebody goes, "Oh, look what I did." My talk about my father-in-law, the Command Sergeant Major Green Beret. He always says, he goes, "Yeah, every time we went out on a mission, it wasn't, you know, 12 of us or 22 of us or whatever size team that's going out on a mission." And he goes, "There's 700, 800 people working on this. We're only a couple of the dozen who are involved in this. They could never go into an area that hasn't already had an overflight by like an OV-22, and they've taken pictures. They're like, well, they want to know what's on the ground before they go hitting it. Okay, probably a LRP or two has already gone out and scouted the areas, make sure there's no OPs that may pick off their approach. Observation points. Okay, there's logistics, there's intelligence, there's supplies and medical support. I mean, nobody fights alone, nobody works alone. This whole, I made it myself, self-made man, self-made billionaire crap. Nobody stood up and helped you in your life. You just did it all yourself. Doubtful. Doubtful. There's a whole list of people I have to credit for where I am in life. Everything from the Jesuit friars that gave me tutored me in physics and math when I was a kid, to a couple of great teachers in high school, uh, to my mentors in the military, my wife for all these years. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons I am where I am today. Becoming a father had a big impact on me. Okay. My kids themselves have had a real influence. It's been a back and forth with kids, and I've grown since becoming a father. Okay. I certainly didn't do it by myself. I was in a cast as a kid. I told you that before. I was a patient at Shriners Hospital for crippled children. Uh, no teacher would take me in her class because they want to lift me up because there was no ADA stairs back then. This is the early 1970s. So I was in this big A-frame cast for a couple of years, and one of the teachers goes, "Yeah, no problem, I'll take them." I'm still friends with her daughter online and still in contact with the family after all these years. 53, 54 years. Um, she picked me up, put me in my chair, or took me, to the hallway, and the janitor would take me in the bathroom. Um, she would do everything I needed to be part of the classroom. Yeah, and it is a big red flag when somebody goes, "Oh, it was all me." Um, I'll give you another example I loved recently. This maybe a little while back when I was watching a lot of series on YouTube because the lockdowns and being bored. But I was going through, I think it's Loudwire, the heavy metal channel, like hard rock music. Where my Rush time machine today. Um, and they had a series asking all these modern heavy metal drummers who were the biggest influences on them. And like every single one of them mentioned, and half of them put Ringo Starr from the Beatles as number one on their list. Why? Because that's the music we grew up with. You could not hear the Beatles. If you're a old Gen Xer, I mean, the Beatles were still everywhere all the time. And it was the music your parents played. It was the music your parents listened to on the radio or on the 8-track tape. Okay. You know, all the hip teenagers like my older sister and her friends, they always had, the White Album and Let It Be on 8-track, later cassettes. Okay. All those metal drummers who like Mike Portnoy, Dream Theater, Avenged Sevenfold, Metal Allegiance, and about 19 other bands. Yeah, one of the most elite drummers of our lifetime. He's like, yeah, Biggest influence, Ringo Starr. Why? Because it got me interested in music. It was fundamental for me. Okay, so this whole thing like, "Oh, I did it all myself, and all my ideas were mine, and I wasn't influenced by anything or anybody. I just, boom, I came out of the ether and created my own utopia." That's just narcissism, okay? We don't get Eddie Van Halen without Alan Halsworth. Eddie said that like 200 fucking times. Oh, you don't get some of the cool stuff that are really shreddy, hard rocky? Eddie loved Michael Scheckner from the Scorpions. You see me wear the Scorpions Blackout t-shirt every once in a while. Great German hard rock metal band. Um, yeah, the favorite musicians I know, they always go back to somebody else and go, "Oh yeah, that guy was the bomb, or that girl was the bomb." You know, nobody who plays a guitar could do anything with the way we play, a modern electric guitar if it wasn't for Les Paul. He invented both the techniques and the gear. So if you're a guitarist and you just come up and say, "Oh, I just figured this all myself. This is all me," you would sound ridiculous. It's like being an actor and not crediting, Jack Lemmon or Robert De Niro, and being a young modern actor today. But like, what was that band? Wasn't Kingdom Come? That was the first Led Zeppelin clone. It's the kid that sings in the band that's out today. He sounds just like Robert Plant. Then he gives an interview and claims he's trying to sing like Steven Tyler from Aerosmith because he caught dead just copying the vocal mannerisms of Robert Plant. And even Robert Plant knew it, and he kind of gave him shit during an interview. Um, so obviously this kid was in love with Robert Plant. He should have just said, "I love Robert Plant. Led Zeppelin's one of the best bands of all time." And he would be correct. Okay. So yeah, nobody does it alone. It's the same. But when a guy tells you that he's done more for an international collaborative agreement than anybody else, that is so myopic, it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. But he wholly believes it. That's the problem. That is the problem. The world is not secure unless you give complete and total control of Greenland. Greenland's already protected by the United States of America. That's the dumbest thing in this whole thing. We already have a base there. We have access. We have nobody blocking us. Nothing is happening. Greenlanders are just going fishing or taking care of their farm animals or going to work or doing something, raising kids, just doing stuff like every other human on Earth does, right? No one's blocking shit from doing anything in Greenland right now. It's a complete made up Putin invading uh, Ukraine for all the wrong reasons. He's doing the same thing, but with Greenland and Venezuela and soon Cuba. So Cuba or Cuba? I keep hearing it both ways. I think it's one of those words you can say both ways, depending what accent you're saying it in. But this is total insanity. Like, even Mitch McConnell took the floor a few days back and was going, "Okay, I'm going to bring up all these points about Greenland. Point number one, we already have that. We don't need to do anything. It's already there. Point number two, ditto, already there. Don't need to do anything. Three, four, five, six. Yeah, everything you're crying, whining, and being aggrieved about already exists. So what's the real point of invading Greenland? Because troops are on the move. And I'm watching Malcolm Nance and other reliable sources on this, as well as the news feeds and the aggregations, all that. S- Somebody's on the move, and it's either for Minnesota or it's for Greenland. Thinking it's Greenland. Because I think one of the things that the evil people are talking into the wannabe king's ear about is that when they tell him about the polling, they only tell him the faithful response. They're not giving him the overall numbers, the independent numbers. Independents win elections in a lot of regions and a lot of districts. Okay, they're just not telling him. He doesn't get. I mean, none of them give a fuck what Democrats, I would say. Okay, that's obvious. Even though Democrats voted for Trump last cycle in small numbers, it was an ad for him. But they're just throwing that out. So they hand him, in the general total, only about 21% of the country now actually is devout, still supporting him. He's rock bottom, according to like Heather Cox Richardson and Ruth Ben Guillet. He's at rock bottoms, but dictators never go lower than about 20%. And until the cult dies off a few years down the road, their low point is going to be 20%. So we're pretty much at the bottom of the pond when it comes to polling. But what they do is they take that 1 out of 5 voter that's just a literal red hat rube, and they just show that group of the polling. So, 79% think you're doing a great job in Venezuela. I don't think if you're a soybean farmer, you're liking what he's doing in Venezuela or Argentina or what he wants to do in Greenland. He's destroying markets for US based businesses, including farmers. And he's telling you the solution of that is a bunch of bullshit in other countries, including invasions, taking oil hostage, creating a slush fund that's going to be used by his campaign donor, which I'm sure is going to result in a bunch of $ Trump and $ millennia being bought, even though it's tanking, because that's the Bitcoin fraud. That's the payment method. I warned you all about that. They thought super PACs were too regulated. There's almost no sunshine on a super PAC. Okay, it's a lot of anonymous money. The person putting in the last stage with the bundled envelope, you get to know that person. Nobody else behind the curtain can be revealed. He thought that was too revealing, so they just went to Bitcoin. We will attack the cartel who buys the least amount of meme coin in billions. I'm not joking. We have a real intense problem on our hand because a corrupt megalomaniac with aging problems is putting out shit like this. If, some random uncle at Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, at a birthday party for the kids just came and rambled some shit out like this, Uncle Jerry, how about we see Dr. Carter in the morning? Okay. He's getting multiple MRIs because something's horribly wrong with the dude. What else are we supposed to think? I'm not making a medical determination. I'm not a doctor. I don't fucking know. Okay. But you can't tell me this is healthy. My in-laws are in their 80s. They're both sharp as a tack, clear as a day when you talk to them. There's no problems. There's no signs of severe age. You can tell, like my father-in-law, he's getting older because he is older. Okay, but there's no like, hey, you with me, buddy? No, none of that. No, there was. Again, we go be seeing the family physician, right? This just screams, oh my God, a doctor intervention is required. At least to a layperson, it does. And you add this up to all his other narcissism. This is why some of the psychologists have gone and psychiatrists have gone public and said this is malignant narcissism. This is it. This is a real mental health problem. So a convicted felon with aging problems and mental health problems is taking orders from Stephen Miller and Ross Voigt, and we're circling down the drain. Have I got it right? The situation is correct, right? I'm pretty sure that's correct. And this is just real quick. I know I just hit an hour, so just real quick. I've talked about words before and vocabulary. Let me match your vocabulary online to a truth about data engineering and data parsing. And I happen to be an expert on data engineering and data parsing. Um, you're not hiding anything by taking the U out of fuck or taking the E out of sex or the A out of raped or using the word unalive instead of suicide. Okay. One that go back and watch George Carlin's bit. I think it was one of the very, very early HBO shows about soft language. Soft language is self-defeating. They're valid words to use because they have definitions. Um, if you think you're, because I saw this the other day and I was really confused if people think this is actually true. They think if they mask the words, um, and it may be a stupid algorithm reinforcing the behavior. Like this could be a real thing on YouTube. I don't write much on YouTube. I just bounce videos over there. I don't do much other than that with my channel over there. I may respond once in a while to a couple of comments if they're either really nice or just really, misinformed. Um, but it may be a platform, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, that's enforcing this, but they think it hides you from being filtered or um, being flagged as inappropriate content. No, putting in similarity hits is trivial when it comes to data parsing, especially when you can put two words together and run them through NLP and get what probably the real intent. Um, that was a thing on one of the platforms back in the day. Like they wanted to post porn, but the place blocked porn. So they would do big asterisk, big cock or big dick, and they would put asterisks in the vowels. You're not hiding anything. Within hours, the algorithm will realize, oh, you mean you actually meant what you wrote. You just thought the asterisks were asking. Now, if YouTube or Instagram are actually programming them and they'll let you substitute words like that, God, that's weird. You're you're not hiding anything is my confusion on my end here. You're not hiding. I know what you're talking about. It sounds very, very silly. Okay. Um, we should be able to have adult conversations and actual free speech that's not doesn't have to be sillily filtered to have a conversation. Because I have noticed not just the number of posts that have asterisk placements in the words, but single posts with multiple uses of asterisks in the in one posting. And I'm like, I don't know what we're trying to accomplish there. Almost every platform I've been on in the last few years has an adult content filter. Just flick the switch in the setting and a whole list of words. Same words by we use for anti-spam. Like one of my clients is focused on non-adult guests in activities. So obvious things like gambling, gang memberships, drugs, porno. Um, we block all that stuff at the firewall, or we put those keywords into giant keyword lists, and or we comb our own new words through some automated processes through subject lines and stuff like that. And headers will have the words in there sometime too in the email. Um, and we automatically increase your spam score if you include swear words or if you have certain vulgarities that would express things like online prostitution, pornography, like that, because it's just an organization that you know per policy we strictly forbid uh, any rated R or beyond content. To put it simply, Okay, nobody wants this content given who our guests are. So we block that all out. We create lists. We know exactly what you're doing. And even if you put in, because this is the anti-spam algorithm I wrote years ago for one of my clients. Yeah, the algorithm could very easily figure out what you were talking about, despite how many special characters you throw in, not just asterisks. We could figure it out. Um, we can use um, what's called a Levenstein distance. It's a mathematical process that tells a word or a phrase or a series of characters how close it is to this, the exemplar. And if it's close enough, we can detect it as a near miss. It's not looking for a target. It's looking to a near miss of the target. Boat is shooting at another boat in World War II and it's missed by 100 yards. It has to adjust. We're looking for those close near misses. Okay. Because they're usually just masking what they already got blocked for previously. Okay. And yeah, that part of the algorithm that worked really good. Yeah. The Levenstein distancing of known domains versus mimicking fake domains, that worked really well. Uh, Near misses on obviously banned content for that particular client in the subject line of an email, that wasn't hard to do at all. Okay. Um, if you're offended by the word, just don't use the word. So that's some, in other words that are just plain English words. If we have to censor it at this level, especially on a platform like Substack, then the whole freedom of expression issue in my head is at question. We can't say the word sex. Sex is a word in the dictionary. It has a definition. It means something. Do we have to mask that word with an asterisk every time we write the word sex? Do I have to bleep out my voice every time I say that word? Most of the time, it's being used in a proper context and a part of a rational, reasonable discussion. Because I worry about there's a lot of doctors here and a lot of OBGYN and female OBGYNs. I'm seeing the ones I saw from other social media, like Dr. Jen. Um, they already have a content problem. Okay. I'm worried about the freedom of expression devolving. And next thing you know, we're going to have another round with these female doctors. They can't show a medical diagram or they can't talk about a vagina. Something that, as an OBGYN, they happen to be a complete expert on. So are we helping here? It goes back to my opening. You know, just interrupting an assembly. Did that really help? I know you got a lot of news. The problem is the faithful now think you're attacking the core of Christianity. And it's an easy accusation. It's an easy accusation under law that spans back. I mean, we're talking Magna Carta, pre-Constitution. If we're going to make an effort, if we're going to have a voice, if we're going to express ourselves, we have to express ourselves in a and I don't mean I understand that civil disobedience, sitting in the pathway and then getting arrested because you're blocking the sidewalk or whatever. Okay, you're willing to take the hit there. I get it. Um, Never had a panic about any of that. I worry that if you have a misconduct under a label of protest, justice, whatever, but you inherently cross that red line in a church because you don't like the politics of one of the pastors of that church, what now stops anybody else from going into somebody else's, name a religious building, any house of worship, or any place of worship? Are they now justified in interruptions? because, yeah, you don't get away with that on my beat, and I'm an atheist. Why? Because that's old school law. That's old school understanding. Again, a colonial sheriff would have arrested you in the colonies for doing that. So let's think through the problem space. I think there's about 10 other ways to get at Mr. Eastwood and get underneath his skin. I think it's more important to get under the skin of his parishioners. Why are you signing on to this? You really want to fuck with them? Ask one of those people at the churches to recite the Sermon at the Mount and not confuse it with the Book of Paul. I just think we have to be careful because we're dealing with nut jobs. We're dealing with people who are seriously off their rocker. They're looking for an excuse to hurt people. And I left out tonight. There's a bigger question in my mind as an atheist, like how can a certain religion be justified when so many people in the religion specifically use it for evil? Because religion and evil in this country go hand in hand. Chattel slavery was justified by the Bible. What moral authority do you arrive? Do you derive from organized religion? When some people are using it against just standard, I think all common denominator morals and ethics, large part of organized religion, especially in America, uses it for some pretty damn evil purposes. We'll get into that in another session. I have to think about that a little more because I don't understand it. I don't know how it can be the savior of our minds, our ethics, our moral, and our soul, and also be the excuse to exterminate the Roma, the dissident Catholics, the cripples, the retardeds, then the mass execution of Jews um, by the Nazis. The Pope was complicit during World War II to the atrocities and to the reign of the Germans and of Mussolini. So I have a hard time reconciling that. But anyways, please think carefully. I'm not saying don't protest. I've been saying the whole time protest, protest, protest. But I've also listed boundaries. Please do not violate the boundaries in a meeting house or a place of worship again. Deal with it out on the sidewalk. Please. That one I'm not comfortable with. Believe it or not, I may be the weirdest person saying it, but please don't do it again. Okay? Just friendly advice. Until next time, please think about it.